Hey, beautiful SPs. Anthony here for another episode of the Single Parents Podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Before we get into the good, just maybe consider doing a few things. Let's just get this out the way so we can have a little chat. First thing that you can do is make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode in the future. I'd also ask you to consider sharing the podcast with a friend, family member, neighbor, anybody who you think could get some value out of listening to the show. And last but not least, if you like what you're hearing, give the show a high rating, 5 stars, highest rating possible. That would be amazing because then also ultimately what it does is it tells those algorithms out there that the show is legit and it passes it along to more people. All right, so just off the jump, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, you can see I in a giant white, basically empty room. If you were looking over here, there's a big old bed. There's some cool art. But basically, where I'm at right now is I am sitting in one of the bedrooms of an Airbnb that I'm currently hanging in over the weekend of recording this episode because I am not at my house. I'm not in my usual hometown. I did some traveling over the last couple of days to get around some very specific, smart, gifted people for the purpose of ultimately beginning the process of building something what I truly believe is going to be amazing. And not just for me, but for all of you, the listeners of this show, the future listeners of this show, the single parents out there who could use some real extra value in their lives. So right off the jump, I just want you to know that this episode 2, I know it's only the second episode of the season, but I'm going to let you know this episode of the show is going to be a little different than my normal episodes. I don't have a fancy hook at the beginning of the episode to really grab you in like the expert podcasters say you're supposed to do. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of fancy editing on this episode, so I'm sorry if I'm stumbling over my words or I sound like I'm just all over the place. But I just wanted this to be as real and authentic as possible, sharing some of my thoughts and talking a little bit about why I'm at where I'm at. So this episode's going to be a little bit different. I don't even know how long this episode's going to be, to be honest. But essentially what I wanted you all to know in this episode is the why behind why I got on a couple of planes and traveled across the country to be at a certain event around a certain group of people here at the beginning of 2025. Because me, as a single dad, I mean, we know this. The whole point of the show is this, right? It costs money to fly across the country, and us single parents out there were like, yeah, I understand the fact that why that would be even a talking point. So that for me, to be completely candid and honest, took a lot of figuring out and preparing for and all that sort of good stuff. And just even time-wise, because my girls they're off with their mom. They're spending time with her right now with her week. But just the time away from them, even not just being in the same city as them, it's just took a lot of mental preparation and a lot of just encouragement within myself to know that, hey, getting out of your comfort zone and stepping into something what I truly believe is something pretty big and pretty legit, and I can't wait to start sharing the details with you all about. I believe it's worth it, but it's still not easy, right? It's still not easy as a parent to get on a plane and fly so many hundreds of miles away from your babies, right? Especially if you have little ones. But I did it, and I'm here, and I'm glad I'm here because I truly believe that the foundation that I'm laying with the podcast and some other things I'm looking to incorporate when it comes to ultimately the overall purpose and goal of this podcast. I don't want to be over dramatic when I say this, but I truly believe it. It could be life-changing stuff for hundreds of single parents out there. And that's why I'm here. Now, I know I'm purposely being very vague because you're like, well, Anthony, what are you doing? Just like, what are you like? What's going on? Like, just tell me, get to the details, spill the tea. What are you working on? Let's hear it. Let's just see if this is even worth the little bit of hype that you're giving us right now. I know I'm doing that. I know I'm being very, very vague right now when it comes to what exactly I am doing. But that's with a purpose. I'm purposely being a little vague right now because I'm still in the very early days of this. Let's just say that, right? Still early days, still building out the vision, building out the idea, getting the tools that I need in my toolbox to make this the best possible whatever it is that it can be and will be. Truly believe it's going to be that. But I'm still in the early days, and I want to make sure that I have the vision and the strategy and the concept of what I'm working on down pat before I really start sharing the deets about it, right? I want to make sure it's as clear as crystal what I got going on so that way I can get you excited about what I have going on with the show and with some other things that are going to accompany the show going forward. That you're going to hear it, you're going to get it, and you're going to be like, that's amazing. I want to be a part of it. That could definitely change my life, change the life of my kids, change the life of my friends. Let's talk, Anthony. But not there yet. And when it comes to even just making a podcast, putting stuff on the internet, putting out content, I heard one creator say, you really got to keep in mind every time you make an episode of a show or put out a video that you are, whatever that episode or video is about, you are often putting out a first impression of yourself and of your content and of your show, of your brand, whatever it is, to many people out there. Because yes, you have your subscribers, you have the people tuning in week after week who know you and you're forming those relationships with, and that's all good. But just how the nature of content creation works, you put something out there, could be episode 56, just a random episode during a random part of the year. And that could be somebody's very first time meeting you, hearing about your show, checking out what you have going on, and getting that first impression of you and your show. And that really stuck with me because it's true. So I know that when I do start sharing about what I have going on, what I'm working on, what I've sacrificed a lot already in this year to put into motion, with many people, I'm only going to have one real impression to get that vision across, to get people hyped, to get them to understand what it is, so that way, hopefully, they want to be a part of it. I'm going to have one impression with a lot of people. Some people, they'll hear it a couple of times, and it'll take a minute, and like, okay, I'm starting to get this. But for many folks, it's going to be, oh yeah, I heard what Anthony's doing. Nah, skip, scroll on to the next thing. And because of that fact, I want to make sure that first impression is a good one. So eventually, later in this year, when I've ironed out some details, had some more conversations with people, really put together what I think is truly going to be legit, then you will hear me start talking about it. Trust me, I'm going to start yapping about it so much, you're going to be like, we get it. We know it's awesome. It's cool. Yeah, but we get it. That's coming. Trust me, that's coming. So then you might be like, okay, if you're not fully ready at this time to talk about what you're doing, what you have going on, why are you even making an episode, bringing it up, right? Why not just do another episode reading Reddit threads about what people out there are saying about single parents, right? Like, why even mention it? Just talk about it when you're fully ready. And to that, I would say, yes, I'm maybe not fully at a point where I'm going to start talking about the what until we get the what really ironed down. I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about the why. Why exactly am I doing this? Why exactly am I so excited for the show and for so many people who are going to come to hear the show and be a part of what I'm building in 2025 and for many years to come? I think we can have that conversation. And I think ultimately the foundation of that why goes back. Well, it's like a two-part thing, right? The first part has to do with me being a dad to my kids. And last year was a really good year. 2004 was awesome. No real complaints. It was stable. It was smooth. I worked my job. They went to school. They went to gymnastics. We hung out, built some memories. It was a good year. I'm not going to, sit here and say anything crazy about 2024. It was a good year for us. But what I realized about 2024 for me, for my kids, for my family, was that we were kind of going forward, right, at a very stable means, nothing crazy. The years before were full of chaos and going down some very, very deep valleys and trying to figure a whole bunch of stuff out. But 2024, we were just cruising. But I realized that by just cruising at the level ground that we were at, going forward in the future, we were going to be cruising at that same level probably for a while, especially when it comes to my job and finances and stuff like that. Like, it was comfortable and it was consistent, but looking down the road 3, 4, 5 years from now, if I kept cruising down that same road later on, when my girls are older, I have young girls, 8 and 9 years old, for those of you who are just listening, finding my content. When they're teenagers, if I'm still going down the same road, I'm still going to be in the same spot, but my needs, their needs as kids, our needs as a family, they're practically, that's going to grow, that's going to change, that's going to increase. We're going to need a house, to be blunt. I'm renting a little house that works for us now when I have me and my 8 and 9-year-old girls. But eventually, as I do have teenagers and our needs do increase, gonna need a little bit more space, gonna need a little bit more money in the bank account as their needs continue to mature. I'm gonna need to figure some stuff out as they grow and think about moving out, and if they want to go to college, and just as I'm practically getting older, I don't know, I should have looked when exactly this episode's coming out. You'll know when this episode comes out because you have the date on your phone while you're listening to this. But basically, I don't know, but my birthday is on the end of this month, right? This January. I don't know if this is coming out in January, but if it is, my birthday's at the end of January, and I'm gonna be 35 freaking years old. Weird. Yeah, oh my gosh. So I'm not getting any younger. So not only are my girls' needs maturing and growing, so are mine. I'm heading into a phase of life that let's just say I'm not a young 20-year-old anymore who can just live off of eating Taco Bell dollar menu and just kind of figuring it out, right? Like, I gotta start preparing for the fact that my body's getting older, my life is maturing, and all these different things. So ultimately, what I realized in 2024 was that, yes, we were comfortable. Yes, we were stable. Yes, we were able to pay our bills and have some good times and do what we needed to do. But when I started to have a future-based mindset, right, I realized, like, if I keep doing what I'm doing, and we keep driving down this same level road, then eventually I'm going to wake up one day and be like, shoot, what we have going on, it ain't working. It's, we got to figure some stuff out. And then, because I waited until that day came, I'm going to wake up and realize we have some stuff to figure out, and it's going to be stressful. It's going to be like a panic. It's going to be chaos. It's not going to no longer be stable. It's going to be chaos because I'm going to realize I've waited too long to figure stuff out, and now I'm not going to know what to do. That's if I keep driving down this road and wait until it's too late. So what I decided at the end of 2024 was that I'm not going to wait until it's too late. I'm not going to wait 4 or 5 years to start preparing for the fact that our needs as a family are maturing and growing. I'm not going to wait. And that was honestly a very tough decision because I knew by not waiting, I had to start putting in some action steps to prepare for 3, 4, 5 years out, which meant I had to put in some extra work. I had to step outside of my comfort zone. I had to basically fight the mentality of like, well, Anthony, why are you about to rock the boat? 2004 was very stable, very consistent. You took the girls to the lake and you went to the park all the time and you did this and you were able to watch Netflix at night. Like, just relax and just keep doing what you're doing. Keep being comfortable. Keep being where you're at, because where you're at's fine. Like, you're just being over dramatic. Like, you don't need to start making things crazy and traveling across the country and staying up late working on extra stuff. Just keep doing what you're doing. I had to fight that mentality. The mentality that battled the concept of being comfortable versus the concept of change and growth. And I know for a lot of people that can be a tough battle. I don't think that's a battle many people even realize that they're in. Because I think regardless of what many people's situation is, status is, condition is, sometimes the idea of change can be a lot more scary than the idea of just staying the same. Because yeah, maybe staying the same is hard and it's uncomfortable and we're not making enough money and we're not doing this or we're not doing that, but hey, at least it's what I know, right? At least I know how to handle my current situation. But change has so much unknown, has so much what ifs, and it takes a lot of work and it could be scary and I could fail and all these things. So I'm just going to choose being comfortable in the same, even though it's hard, versus the hardness, right, of putting in the work to change. A lot of people fight that battle and just decide just to keep doing what they're doing. And I was tempted to do the same. But I ultimately looked at my girls, looked at myself, looked at the show that we have, looked at the fact that there's a lot of single parents out there who need help, not just entertainment from the show, not just to have some nice support and encouragement a couple of times a week from the show, but who need some legit help. And I realized that no, because of those few reasons I just mentioned, the hardness, the scariness of change is far worth it compared to the idea of staying the same and just doing what I'm doing. I told you I've been around some very smart people the last day and a half, hearing some very encouraging things, people who are very successful, very wealthy, very driven in life, who've really helped me a lot kind of shape what I want to shape. And one of those people, she said something truly amazing. She said this about parents in general, but I think it's really great for single parents, especially co-parenting single parents who maybe don't have their kids with them 24/7, 365, and do get some time to kind of just have it be them while their kids are with the other parent. I think this was genius. She said this: when you're with your kids, you should focus on building up them. But when you're away from your kids, you should focus on building up for them. Let me say that one more time because that was pretty good, right? That was pretty juicy. Let me say that again. When you're with your kids, focus on building up them. But when you're away from your kids, focus on building up for them. And I just heard that pretty recently, but I think that sums up why I wanted to put some stuff into action at the end of 2024, is because I realized we were chill, we were fine, we were comfortable when the girls were with their mom, when I didn't have them. I was good. I was hanging out with friends. I would binge watch my shows. I would work on the podcast. I would do what I had to do. I was coasting. I was good. But was I building up anything really for them outside of working my normal 9 to 5 and just kind of getting by? Not really. In 5 or 6 years, I didn't want to look back on my life and realize that all this time that I have as a co-parenting single dad was wasted. was just kind of all the extra time was just kind of I like think about it for my context. Think about it. I have my kids every other week, right? That's my co-parenting schedule. So basically for half of the year, I think Tani and I were talking about this on one episode last year. Don't like thinking about this, but it's true. But for half of the year, I don't have my kids practically like with me in my house because they're at their mom's house. So for me being a single guy, where half of the year my kids are with their mom, I have half of the year basically to do what I want to do. Like, yeah, I wake up, go to work, and clock out. But after that, it's my time. I can do whatever. So, how am I going to use that time? What am I going to do? Am I just going to chill and coast? Or am I going to realize I have half the year to devote to building up something for my kids, something for you all, something for many people out there who need help? And then the other half of the year, when I do have my kids, I get to focus on building them up. How awesome is that? How many people even get to say that they have that opportunity? How many people are even in a situation where their time looks like that? It was a wake up call. And I decided that it was time to start building. So, number one, that's part of my why. I said there's two parts to my why. That's my first part is I'm building up for my kids, building up for myself, building up for you. So that's why I'm here. The second part of the why comes from the fact that I've said from the very beginning, when I started this show years ago, I think I started the show 3 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It's been a while. That's not always been the most consistent thing in the world, but I had the idea and concept of the show and put out some episodes of the Single Parents podcast years ago. But I've said even from the very beginning that I wanted ultimately this show to be something that could encourage single parents and to remind single parents that we're hot and we got this and we're not alone and all that sort of good stuff. Yeah. But ultimately, it was like, I want something else for this show, something to actually help single parents. And I know the encouragement helps. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I was like, I want to figure out something that truly gives single parents, and again, super vague. I just didn't know at the time, but I was just like something to have success and to thrive within their lives. Because I'll just speak for myself. I'm sure many of you could relate. The idea of thriving as a single parent sometimes is a laughable concept, right? Because we're out here just trying to survive, right? The idea of thriving and to look at our lives and be like, man, at the end of the day, I'm killing it. I've hit all my goals, vision boards, and all these different things sound so cool. But that for many of us, it's just like, bro, I'm just trying to make it to the end of the week, have enough food on the table for my kids. Or, bro, I'm just trying to make it to the end of the day because I don't even know how I'm going to pay this, that, or the other bill. That's a lot of our situations, and that's I've been there. Trust me, I've been there. But I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I was like, I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it is, but I just want something more for this idea I have when it comes to being a show for single parents. But I didn't know what that looked like. Then, let's see, I think it was a couple months ago, maybe it was like a month ago or whatever. So as a podcast, as a creator, I like to follow other podcasts and creators out there, see what they have going on. And there's this one super big podcast, very popular. I think it's like sometimes number one or number two in the podcast charts, right? I won't say the name of the podcast, but maybe many of you've learned how to give that Gluck Gluck 3000 from that podcast. Let's just say that. And if you know, you know. If you don't worry about it. Very big podcast. And so I saw some posts from the host of that podcast, from the podcast's social itself, really hyping up something that was coming. Kind of like what I did at the beginning of this podcast, being like, hey, something's coming. We're keeping it vague, but just mark your calendars for this date because we're going to announce it. We're going to drop it. It's going to be life-changing. It's going to be all these things. We're going to get you guys hyped. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And many people, many followers of the show in the comments were like, oh my gosh, so what is she doing? Is she making a reality show? Is she opening up some kind of foundation? Like, what does she have going on? Like, people were getting hyped because, again, top podcast, number one or number two in the charts, millions of followers. People were hyped. What is she? This is going to be good. I'm so excited. I can't wait for this date. Can't wait for the announcement. All this build up. And then eventually the date comes and the announcement is made and the host reveals the big thing that she's been working on all this time. And it was like a bottle of water with her brand name on it. That was it. Like, I don't want to diminish her accomplishments. I'm sure she worked very hard on that. I'm sure maybe it's her dream always to create a beverage with her brand. It is pretty cool. Like, I don't want to sit and poo-poo on that because that is a big accomplishment. But a lot of people weren't too happy when they found out that that was the big announcement, right? A lot of people were disappointed. A lot of people kind of felt betrayed. That's why I went through the comments, and eventually they being maybe the creator themselves or her team, started deleting some of the comments because a lot of them were like, "This is it. This is what you were hyping. This was the big announcement. It's just another thing you want to sell me." Like, I have a lot of people with a lot of companies out there, or a lot of other shows and podcasts who are trying to sell me and who do the ad reads and to do this and that. And that's part of the business, right? That's how you pay to keep the podcast going, or keep the show going, or keep the YouTube videos or TikTok videos going. You got to sell ads, and that's just the business, right? But a lot of people felt betrayed, being like, oh, I thought maybe this was different. Because everybody else is trying to sell me their thing, their chocolate, their merch, their company sponsor stuff, their code for 20% off onions or whatever it is. I thought this was going to be different though, but it's just another product that they want me to go buy, and yada, yada, yada. And that really hit me, and I took a lot away from seeing people's responses to that. And I also thought about this show. I was like, well, how is this going to work for me? Like, I want this podcast to grow and thrive and be successful, but do I want to be another show out there that's like, single parents, we got you. We know that you're struggling sometimes. We know it's hard to pay the bills. We know that you're just really trying to figure things out, maybe working 2 jobs sometimes to figure stuff out. But now we're going to take a break and do an ad from our sponsor. Go buy this monthly box of onions. It only costs $59.99. Put in the code Single Parents Podcast for 10% off. Go spend more money. Yay. Now back to the show. All right. Yeah, guys, I know it's hard sometimes and you don't know how you're going to pay the bills, but we love you. Like, see how that just doesn't make any sense? And that's kind of stupid and not very helpful. So I was like, how is that going to work? Like, if for me to make money and to build this show and to expand it, like, am I going to have to sell stuff to people that many of the people in my demographic who listen to the show can't afford, who maybe I couldn't even afford, right? Like, I thought about myself, like, let's just say the podcast grows and the show grows 2-3 years from now. And Anthony, 3 years ago was listening to the show and heard about whatever it is. I would start speeding up through the show, right, to get through the ad reads, because I'm like, well, whatever this is, I can't afford it anyways. I can't buy this anyways, so I'm not even going to listen to this ad read because it's pointless. So I get it. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. So eventually I started thinking through, like, well, then what can I do? What can I use this podcast for? If it's not just to grow and to encourage, which will also mean I'm going to have to maybe sell something to keep it going. How do I structure this show in a way that's going to benefit everybody? It's going to benefit me when it comes to having the ability to grow and expand the show practically, but it's also going to benefit you, the listeners, the hot SPs out there, when it comes to getting the most value out of the show and not just being not just feeling like this is just another thing where somebody's trying to sell you something and make you feel crappy about the fact maybe that you can't afford. I can't afford a brand sponsored $10 or whatever it is bottle of water, and maybe that makes me feel like I'm not good enough, or I'm a failure, or whatever it is. I'm not going to do that. Don't want to do that. So I started looking at other options and other things and other ideas, and I ultimately truly believe I found something that's going to allow me to not only move this show forward in some amazing ways, but is ultimately going to be able to give back and help so many people out there, so many single moms and single dads out there who feel like they're stuck. Who, again, the idea of thriving, crazy talk, crazy work right there. But I truly think I found something that allows me to sit down and to have these conversations with single parents out there and be like, hey, did you know that you don't have to be stuck? You don't have to look at your kids and feel like you failed them in some way, which you haven't, as long as you're showing up being loving and supporting and a safe space for your kids. Doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank, like you have not failed your kids, but that's a conversation for another episode. But I want to have something that not only just encourages single parents about that truth, but shows them practically, hey, did you know there's things that you can do right now to start putting yourself in a place where you and your kids thrive? It's not just some vague idea, some nice sounding idea to help you get through your crappy day. Like, no, there's real things that I'm learning right now that can help you, the listener, the single mom, the single dad out there, be in some really good places in your future, and your kids can be in some really good places in their future. So I was like, that's cool. I think I found it. This is what I've been looking for. This is going to be good. But to circle back around, when I found it, we'll talk more about the it later, I promise. But when I found it, I was like, okay, for me to build it, it's going to take the work. It's going to take traveling across the country. It's going to take spending some money I don't even really have. It's going to take some sacrifice, some long nights, some early mornings. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot. But I decided to do it because I truly believe that enough is enough. The system is not built for us as single parents to thrive and to find a lot of success. Yes, there's successful single parents who have figured it out, but for the most of us, it's not built for us to thrive. It's systems built for us to stay in a perpetual cycle of just trying to survive. And that's unacceptable. Yeah, I'm just going to say that's unacceptable. And I'm tired of hearing about the fact that so many of you, so many amazing moms and dads out there can barely feel like they have their head above water sometimes, and who don't know what to do, and who'd love to invest so much more in their kids, but just practically can't because they have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make it through a month. I'm just sick of that. And I want to do something about it. And I truly believe enough is enough, and it's time to start really making some generational change in the lives of our families and the life of my family. Going back to point number 1. So that's why I'm here, people. That's why I'm here. This Airbnb on the floor of this Airbnb, hundreds of miles away from my kids. It's because enough is enough. It's time to make some change. It's time to not just be comfortable in our states anymore. As crappy as our states might be, we sometimes feel too comfortable staying in those states because it's just what we know. It's time to make some change. It's time to not only focus on building up our kids, but also start building up for our kids. And if I have to put in the extra work to lay the foundation to set the ball in motion that's going to hopefully allow many of you to build up for your kids, then I'm fine with that. That's cool. That's awesome. I'm excited. I'm stoked. I believe in this. I believe in you. I believe in what this can be for you in your life. And we're going to make it happen. So that's the vague pitch. That's the vague pitch. And then when I'm ready to have those real conversations to put out the first impressions of the details of what I have going on, we'll talk about it. Just don't you worry. Just make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, that you've turned on automatic downloads. You've done all the things. So that way, when I really start getting into it, You get to hear what it is. You get to get hyped. You get to say, Anthony, let's go. I'm interested. I'm down. Again, it's not something that I'm going to look to sell you one day. This is just me getting the tools I need to really make some change in the lives of our families. I think I hear some of the people that I have been hanging with the last couple of days downstairs getting breakfast, and we're going to head out and keep on doing some stuff, hearing some conversations, building up something cool. So I'm going to get ready to wrap this up so I can go downstairs and say good morning to them. You all, thank you so much for just hearing me out. I know this episode is a little random, maybe a little weird, a little different, but I just want you to know my heart behind what I truly believe is going to be something amazing going forward. But in the meantime, you all out there, just keep doing the best that you can. Know that you're amazing. Know that we see you. We want to give you all the flowers. And until next time, you all out there, just stay beautiful. Bye.